Ask and ye shall receive. Power to the people. Let's rank the Scream killers. Let's go. What's up, guys? I thought I was done with all the Scream content. Some of you were glad that I was done with the Scream content. But some of you still wanted me to do the ranking the killers, because I did say at the beginning I was going to do ranking the killers. But then I'm going to admit I did get kind of burnt out, and I longed for doing other content. I just did the review for Open 24 Hours, which was a lot of fun. Matter of fact, I just finished another movie that I'm going to review for you right after I record this, for It Stains the Sands Red. Really enjoyed this little zombie flick. And I'm going to do another episode of Why the Hell Is No One Talking About This Movie? But first order of business, on Twitter I posted, which would you want? Would you want me to do the Scream ranking, or would you want me to do a top 10 Giallos? Because I've been really wanting to do some more top 10s, and I've been planning on doing a top 10 Giallo films for the longest time. But just to give you a little bonus, I'm going to also do top 10 Italian horror inspired movies. These are films that are not Italian horror. They're not filmed in that country, but they could be American. But they definitely have some strong Italian horror vibes. I mean, hell, in Scream 6, the beginning, they're talking about Italian horror and Giallo and Argento and all that stuff. And I got giddy, It's about time. But, that's for another video. We'll get into that. But anyway, as you could probably imagine, spoilers ahead. It's sad that I have to say that, but I've literally had people in the comments get mad about spoilers in a video that would be impossible for me to not give you spoilers, okay? So yeah, know that going into this, I'm gonna give you the killers of every Scream movie, all right? So if you don't want to know anything, get the hell out of here. Especially for Scream 6, all right? So anyway, let's jump into it. Let's get into the countdown. There are 13 killers in all for this countdown, in 4 for Scream 6 alone. Technically 5, but one of them's dead, on arrival, so we don't count him. But that's a good place to start. My number 13 is going to be Jason, and you know what? I loved this idea. I loved that they actually showed the killer at the beginning of the movie. That when he took that mask off, I was like, oh shit, we're in new territory now. This is different. I'll give him that. This was really cool. But you can't really give Jason a higher ranking because he dies. He's pretty much the second victim of the movie. But I loved that opening scene with him. Really cool stuff. And kind of setting the table for how big this whole world could be, these Ghostface killers. Okay, number 12, Ethan. You're noticing a trend here? Just because Ethan, he was kind of that red herring that almost immediately, I'm sure a lot of you were probably like, he's going to be the killer if you kind of do the math and the canceling things out, because we know that the main characters, I guess the core 4, the chances of one of them being the killer is pretty much slim to none, all right? So if you did your basic math in this movie, you'd probably nail one of them of the 4. That's the thing that Scream gets away with too. They always make it like there's no way you're going to predict it. Of course, you're not going to predict all the killers, especially when there's 4 of them. But you're not going to be surprised at who the killers are. So yeah, Ethan could have been a more interesting killer, but it was kind of like they shot their load at the end of the movie with him. But he wasn't really much in the way. I think the best part with Ethan was that whole scene when he's on the subway with Mindy. And we start getting really suspicious about him. So yeah. Number 11, we might as well go ahead and throw in Quinn. I think Quinn had the most potential, and I really wanted, I guess, a little bit more character development for her in this movie. And guys, I know this sounds like I don't like Scream 6 because I'm putting these killers at the end. I really enjoyed that movie after 2 watches, okay? And I'm so much so that I'm really looking forward to watching it again. What it lacks for in terms of quality killers, it more than makes up for in so many other areas, all right? So, but yeah, Quinn, again, it's, I think it's because they had 3 killers at the end of the movie, and they don't really, they haven't really built them up that much. the thing I liked about Quinn was she really goes for it in the end. She goes completely psycho. And it was kind of cheap how they did the whole, you know, she died, but then of course she comes back at the end. Okay, number 10, I'll go Charlie on this one. And I used to put Charlie higher, I think. I've only done one other ranking. And I think I talked myself into liking Charlie more than I really did after I kind of stepped back from it all. I do like that he is the character that states the rules. I like that they had a killer giving the rules in a Scream movie. That was really cool. But outside of that, Charlie, you know, he's pretty much Jill's lapdog. He's not a killer that, I guess, takes charge. I mean, to be able to pull off what him and Jill are trying to pull off, I guess you got to give him some points there. But comparing him to the rest of the killers in the franchise, no way. So, yeah, Charlie is my number 10. Number 9, I'm going to go Detective Bailey. It's a shame that these killers weren't more impactful because I think if the killers would have been up to the quality of the rest of the movie, you know, sans the plot armor, then this would have been like one of the best freaking slasher movies in a long time, okay? But yeah, you had some problems here and there. Detective Bailey, I'll give him some credit because it is kind of cool that they had an older man be the killer in a Scream movie because they haven't really done that before. Kind of reminded me of like what they did with you know, Ben in I Know What You Did Last Summer. You know, he's an older guy. So, and you know, he's a freaking cop. It takes balls to be a cop, a detective, and you know, completely be crazy and flip, you know, because of your son, and to, I guess, just orchestrate this whole thing. Which that was one of my problems with the movie. You know, I think to be able to put all those ducks in a row and get all that, you know, evidence, you know, you could debate back and forth about, is it possible? Yeah, I'm sure it's possible. But overall, I think he was just a decent killer. I didn't think he was flat out amazing. He's no, well, I guess we'll save that till later on in the countdown because this had similar motivations as another Scream movie. Number 8, I'm gonna go Richie. Now I will say the final act has really grown on me for Scream 5. I used to give that movie the hardest time, and basically because I thought it was predictable and I didn't think the killers were all that up on my first couple watches. But now, I guess since Scream 6 came out, it gives Richie a little bit more weight. And I like how this focused on toxic fandom. And by the way, Barry from Wolfman's Got Nards, he made a video about Scream and toxic fandom, and you might as well chalk that up to Halloween too. It's always interesting to observe the fan community when these movies come out. You're always gonna have some people that, I guess they think their opinions are more valuable than everybody else's, and they get upset with you when you have a differing opinion. It's silly, but yeah. But yeah, Barry, he put out a video about that, and he had me, because he asked me and Zach Sherry if he could, I guess, mention us in the video, and it's a good video, definitely check it out. But yeah, Richie, thinking back on it, I kind of like Richie, and you know, it doesn't hurt that you have Jack Quaid doing, you know, the heavy lifting in that character because he's a really great actor. And I will say, going back, knowing what you know, watching Scream 5, he almost pulls it off as far as being convincing that he's not the killer. You know, and it's so much so that you thought that he was the killer. I guess you could almost call him the obvious slasher. He fits into that category. So I guess there's a couple movies in the Scream franchise that do have an obvious slasher type of killer. Richie would be one of them. You know, the guy who you think that he's so much the killer that he can't be the killer. But in this case, he is the killer. Number 7, I'm gonna go Amber just because of how sheer, psychotic, crazy she is. She does have one of my favorite reveals out of the franchise. Just the way she revealed herself. She's really going for the misdirection, and then she completely flips it and shoots the girl that everybody's pointing the finger at right, you know, point blank right in the head as she admits that she's a killer. And it was a really cool moment, I thought. Also, it's cool that she's the character that Tara is talking to at the very beginning of the movie. You know, they're going for a strong misdirect here, like, oh, she's not gonna be the killer because she's actually talking to her. But of course, you know, with Scream, anything's possible. But you know, again, after repeat watches, I liked Amber. Actually, she's a really fun character, And I loved the performance, you know, by the young actress. She really goes for it in the final act. Number 6 is Mickey for a couple reasons. I mean, freaking Timothy Olyphant, how could you go wrong with him? I loved his portrayal in the final act of the movie. I just love the final act of Scream 2 anyway. But he is like the first reveal. And this is one of those situations where the first reveal is just as strong as the final reveal. I really liked Mickey, and he's a character that on face value on paper wouldn't be that big of a deal, but I like his motivations, you know, because you can tie that right into the news and blaming things on pop culture and society, and he's wanting to blame everything on the movies, you know, and this is something that could probably work, especially in today's age, and I think a lot of the things that went on back then in the 90s still go on today, you know, even more so, I guess, with social media. I mean, I think Mickey would have eaten social media up like you wouldn't believe. Number 5 is going to be Roman from Scream 3. It's cool that Roman is the only killer in Scream 3. It's the only Scream movie that has one killer. Originally, they wanted to have 2 killers in the movie, but they ended up settling on one. And I remember watching Scream 3 at the time, and I was thanking God for the final act because everything that came before it just got really campy. There's a lot of charm to Scream 3, looking back, especially with Parker Posey, of course. She is infectious. But Scream 3 is probably the most comedic Scream movie. You could almost watch this as like a scary movie type, like a spoof. It does feel like a spoof. I mean, they're kind of spoofing Stab in the movie. But it's just a little bit more cartoonish, I guess, than the rest of the franchise. But Roman, I almost think Roman got robbed because he should have been in one of the other Scream movies, as effective as he was as a killer. And I'll even say probably one of the most emotional showdowns with him and Sidney. And I believe she literally stabbed him in the back. Number 4, Jill from Scream 4. Emma Roberts completely slayed in this role. I enjoyed her performance so freaking much. And this is a character, she's so fed up with her cousin, Sidney this and Sidney that, and Sidney's getting all the attention, and it just drives her over the edge. And so she comes up with this whole plan. She's gonna be Ghostface, brings in Charlie, and this is all her plan. And I loved the reveal at the end, and how she pretty much pulls a Jim Carrey and kicks her own ass, and it was glorious. But also, this is the only Scream movie that has a second final act, where at the hospital, and then she shined in that scene too. She was that killer that you're screaming at the other characters in the movie, because you know what they don't know, right? And that's what made it so fun about this particular scene. She's thinking that Sidney is dead, and then the look on her face when she finds out that Sidney's alive, just great stuff, priceless. Great lines like, what are you, Michael fucking Myers? Love that stuff. I about lost my shit when I saw that in the theater. Getting into the top 3, number 3, Debbie Salt. This list, it's not that shocking. I'll say that right now, but I'm just being honest. Debbie Salt, you can compare her to the Pamela Voorhees. This is the mother that wants her revenge. And I think Laurie Metcalf's performance, she goes a little left of center, and there's a few moments you can see it in the eyes. She's one of those actresses that she knows how to convey the emotion in the eyes without having to say a single word. And she's completely insane, and you believe it because she's a mother, and mothers will kill for their children, and they don't even care if their kids are guilty. I guarantee you, half you mothers out there right now, if your son turned out to be a serial killer, you'd probably still cover for him. All right, not all of you, but a couple of you would. Okay, you and you, I guarantee you would. But I also love the scene where she's playing right along with everybody else's suspicions. Like the scene where Gail's like, Cotton Weary is the killer, and her reaction is, Cotton Weary? Number 2, gotta go with Stu, of course, the guy that everybody wants to come back, and those that don't want him to come back, they hate the people that want him to come back, which I don't get that at all, It's all fan service, I guess, but it wouldn't ruin my day if Stu came back. You could have the same old cliche Scream ending, which to give 6 credit though, It did have more killers. So is more, enough of a change? I don't know. Is it? I think to really change it up, bring back a previous killer, and in this case, Stu would be amazing. I honestly think if it's written correctly, like go ahead and pay Kevin Williamson $20 million to come in and write a really great script with Stu being the killer. Of course, I know there's no way they'd pay him $20 million. That's how much they spend on these movies, I think. But Matthew Lillard is just electric in not just the final act, but the entire movie. He is a scene stealer. And you don't want him in another movie? I don't, because of a TV? Are you serious? Jesus, people. I'm giving you gold and you don't want the gold, okay? You're throwing the gold out of my hand and I don't understand it, all right? You want another cliche killer, all right? Stu's amazing, all right? And of course, number one is Billy. And I just love how dark and edgy Billy is, and how he's like, he's the good looking guy. The women swoon over him still to this day. And I think you can compare Billy to like maybe some other, because there have been other serial killers where women, they just swooned over them, like Ted Bundy. Although Ted Bundy's a different type of, he looks more preppy, more like a lawyer type. But Billy was he looked like the bad boy. But also he was just this tortured, tormented person. He was really hurt by Sidney's mother sleeping with his father. Maureen Prescott tore his family apart. And so he wanted his revenge. So it's believable. And I love that the finger is pointed at Billy so many times throughout the movie, so much so that you think, okay, he can't be the killer. They go even as far as to putting the fake blood on him. But of course he ends up being the killer. The first Scream has one of the best final acts, I think, in all of horror. Not just the Scream franchise. It is a fantastic final act. And I think that's because it's not a silent killer running after a victim or victims, There's a whole exchange, dialogue going on throughout the entire final act, and it's completely just riveting. And it all centers around Billy. Billy is so good in the first Scream. He's such a great character that they've brought him back in Scream 5 and Scream 6, which is really cool. So, my thing is, how cool would it be to have Billy, that ghost of Billy or whatever it is in Scream 7, and then bring Stu into the picture, and Stu has some kind of exchange with Sam? That would be pretty interesting. That would be really interesting. So anyway, that's it. That's my killers ranking like you guys requested. Be sure to post your rankings down in the comments. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. And on Fridays, we do Fear for Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums and on my socials. Support me on Patreon. Buy me a coffee. And guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day. Drumdum out.